Hey folks, Adam AI4UH, and I have received another blue racer. This one is pretty neat looking. Comes with the corded wedge connector. It is serial number 134665, so that puts this around 1944, and that's consistent with the mainframe assembly. Let's start getting things apart on here. Do a little bit of inventory. Okay, we got a loose binding post. That's easy enough. We'll fix that right up. All right, a little bit of an inventory. So the binding post was loose. I see some rust on some parts. Doesn't really look to be missing anything except for the weight. It's got the original finger piece. The circuit closer needs to be adjusted, but we'll get to that naturally. Well, that's cool. So this mainframe assembly, it's definitely pre-1944. You can see how squared off it is. The newer style ones, the 1945 and beyond, have the more rounded mainframe assembly, and that's not just rounded on top, but also like the edges are chamfered, I think is the right word for that, in a more rounded way. But what's also interesting is look at the opening here. It's very squared off. You know, the other style, the earlier style, was the cloverleaf pattern. I think I've got one of those here. So if you look at the mainframe on this, and you see in here, it's got kind of a cloverleaf pattern. It's like they drilled out the corner and drilled out the corner and then cut between them. Whereas on this one, it's just square. So that's pretty interesting to have another example in the collection. But yeah, I mean, other than being pretty dirty, it looks like it's in really good shape. The underside is pretty immaculate, actually. Let's go ahead and get this thing apart, and we'll clean it up and put it back together again. So I always just start with the easy stuff. We'll unscrew what we can. Oh, that main frame is a little loose on there too. Wonder what kind of a life this key had to have so many things get loosened up on there. So we'll pull the tension adjuster out. That spring can stay put because it's attached. We'll just loosen up the binding post. We'll just loosen up the other tensioner. Ooh, that was really tight. It always amazes me how tight people make these tensioners. You really, I mean, a light touch on a key really helps you have a much better fist. So if you're tightening the tension up, why? You know, I'm not saying don't. You know, it might be a personal preference or it might be what the key needs, but why? You know, let's start with why. All right, so we'll take the contact spring off, and we can go ahead and take the top trunnion screw off, which will let us take the pendulum assembly out. Ooh, that's stuck in there pretty deep. There we go. And now we're starting to get down to the bottom of things. Okay, so that comes off of there. This circuit closer can now come the rest of the way out. It'll be interesting to see what kind of shape the washer is on this. A lot of the washers on the crinkle finish have kind of, become part of the finish over the years. This one doesn't look to be so bad. Let's see if we can give that a little help. I always try and dig those out from the inside so that I don't scratch the finish on the outside. And then let's go ahead and get these feet off. Pretty easy. And these feet don't feel awful. They're a little hard, but I will probably put the same ones back on. Might just give them a little TLC. And we can go ahead and get the contact post for the dip contact off of here. Looks like we've got an insulating washer, a metal washer, the post, and on the other side, we're just going to have the screw head. I don't think there's another metal washer. There is another insulating washer, which may or may not have that little tube connected. We shall see. I would expect it to be two separate pieces, but wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't. There we go. Oh, well, that's not very happy. So this is probably Bakelite. It's just snapped like that, but I'm sure we'll be able to get that back together. Go ahead and take the other contact post off, which has the circuit closer connector on it. All right, and this one's in a little bit better shape. Yeah, none of this is in bad shape. There's a little rust, there's a little corrosion, a little grime, but nothing too egregious. All right, so just getting this binding post off. There we go. Another insulating washer. There it goes. Oops, sorry for bumping the camera there, folks. Yep. I just like to get all these screws out, all the connections clean. There we go. This one I can do by hand because it was already loose. So we can just take the nut off of it. I guess that is still called a nut even though it's round. Screw will come right out the bottom. Nice clean connection in there. Now here's something I am not used to seeing. We have nuts on the main frame assembly and screws on top. Normally those are screwed in from the bottom. That's pretty interesting. Here's the this one. You can see the screw on the left there. On this side it's a nut. I wonder if that, I assume that came from the factory that way, but you never know. You never know. So we'll take these from the top. And that just leaves the damper assembly. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's get it cleaned up. I've got a a bucket of soapy water here, and I'm just going to give everything a scrub with a very soft toothbrush. Get some of the dirt off of it. You know, we don't really want to take any of the finish off, or otherwise mangle this key. But definitely the soft toothbrush and the soapy water will help us get this thing cleaned up. And the nameplate's not looking so hot. Looks like a lot of the grime is coming off, but not all of it. And the red paint on the bug there has seen better days, but I've got a trick for that. A little bit of gel nail polish, which we'll hit with a UV to cure it. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and just scrub everything down, and I'll bring you back in after I've got the grime off of stuff. Okay, and that concludes the scrubbing. There was only one incident where a nut got dropped on the floor, and I was crawling around for about 10 minutes before I finally found where it ran off to. But overall, that's really not so bad. Okay, so let's get all our parts in order. Feet, insulators, more insulators, knobs. Okay, so that's what the base ended up looking like. Not so bad. Still a little bit of dirt. I mean, these crinkle finishes always do this to me. I don't want to get a harder brush. I like to use only a soft brush on these. I don't want to get a harder brush and really scrub at it, because then the crinkle starts coming off. But there's just a little dirt deep in there. I'm going to let that go. At some point in the future, maybe in the next lifetime of service, because now it's going to be ready for another lifetime of service. Maybe in its next lifetime of service, it gets a fresh coat of paint on there. But for now, let's go ahead and start with the mainframe. And look how nice that mainframe cleaned up. It's basically, it's not quite new, but it's basically new again. And also, these were the two little nuts that were on that. And remember how I was saying, I don't know if that was factory or not. I'm pretty sure they're not. As I was cleaning these, they definitely felt like a different type of steel than everything else. And I can also see in the holes that they sink into, there's a little bit of a concave, which I would normally expect to see on this kind of a screw, where it's got that taper to it. So whether or not it's factory, no bother. We're going to put this back together as found, and I have absolutely no doubt that it's going to be a fantastic key. So, okay. Those are going to go on the main frame assembly, and these are the two screws. You can see they didn't clean up quite as well, so these are the two screws that came off of that. And that just further leads me to believe that somebody worked on this thing. I can also see where there's threads tapped in, and obviously these are just sliding straight through. So somebody at some point definitely replaced these. And that's okay. In the life of a bug, things like that are going to happen. And how old is this? We said it's 1944, and it's now it's 2026. And that doesn't screw in. So I guess I was mistaken about the cleaning up on these, because that tells me that this is going to need to be the longer ones. So we'll try that again. But yeah, so 2026. So what's 44 to 2000? You know, that's 66 plus 26, 76, 86, 92, I believe. So 92-year-old key now. It's almost 100 years old. Having a couple of screws that were replaced along, you know, that 90-something years, it's not that big a deal. That doesn't bother me a bit. As a matter of fact, I see so many keys that clearly never had, you know, an ounce of maintenance. I appreciate knowing that somebody took care of this along the way. You know, that's nice. Okay, now, since these are not exactly the right screws, we have to make sure that our mainframe alignment is good. I'm just eyeballing it. I'm sure I could make up a tool or a jig for this. That looks reasonably well aligned to me. Let's see if we can give that a solid turn. Okay, that feels pretty good. All right. Okay, next, let's go ahead and get the damper assembly on. And that cleaned up very nice too. That was actually one of the least damaged parts. There we go. Damaged. It was one of the least corroded parts. Use the right words here. Words matter, folks. I guess corrosion is, in effect, damage. Oops, sorry for bumping the camera. But usually when I say damage, I mean somebody dropped this key along the way, blah, 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 and now it's bent. This did not have that. This key's had a pretty decent life. There we go. Felt like I had to turn that screw in a mile. Okay, that feels pretty good. Next, let's go ahead and get on our binding posts. So these are our binding post nuts, and these, and then we're going to need a couple of different pieces here. So we'll need one of these, and one of these, and on this side, doesn't have a washer, so those other two washers go there and there. No, that's going to go there. Okay, so those three washers, none of them go on the binding post on this one. Perfect. So we'll need our tapered screw. This is going to come in from the bottom, and that's actually what's going to give the electrical connection to the base from the binding post. Then we can just put that nice smooth binding post nut on there. And then the knurled nut. Okay, and then on this side, we're going to have those cleaned up really nice, right? They look brand new, basically. A little bit of drop of water left on that one. So we've got our insulator, and of course we've got the connector. So that's going to take one of these That doesn't look right. Let's see though. Put that insulator back in. Yeah, that seems way too tall. But is it? I guess not. It's only a little bit taller. Let's put it on there and have another look. Okay, I guess that's right. And that will swing down there and connect there. So let's go ahead and get that on next. So that's going to get the other connector and the other insulator. These insulators, of course, are just to keep these connectors from touching the base. Even though the base is coated, that's not always the case, especially on like the chromed ones. And yeah, every little bit counts. All right, so we're going to need one of these screws, and we're going to need one of these bottom insulators. Oh no, these are going to be top insulators on this one. So we'll put this up through the bottom, and we want it to be contact, contact, insulator, insulator, which I always feel like these are a pain. Sometimes I have to do them in smaller sections. And just turn it through until everything gets aligned. And we're just missing the insulator. Okay, now we can start feeding that through there. Turn it the rest of the way in. And of course, nothing's threaded here. You just have to turn these to get it to line up through those connectors and the insulators. And get that approximately over to where it's going to land. And then on the other side, we can get our binding post. Now on this bug, binding posts are both the same. And you can see those cleaned up really nice. The contacts basically look brand new. I am going to choose the smoother contact for back here, and that's going to get an insulator on top. That goes the other way around. There it is. And we can just thread that on. And there was just a little bit of liquid in there. Shame on me for not getting that out. Let's try that one more time. I guess it was in the threads. It just really wanted to be stubborn. Okay. So I don't need to make that super tight. It can just be a little bit, and we'll get everything cinched down the way we like it later. We can go ahead and grab the other screw, and remember this was our insulator that had a little busted piece to it. So we'll just be really gentle with this as we get things back together. And I'm just going to kind of hold that broken piece in place with my thumb. Once everything's tightened down, it will survive indefinitely. I have replacements. I could 3D print replacements, but I rather use the original parts when at all possible. That is my preference, to put these things back together just the way we found them. And just loosen that up a hair, get that back the way we like it. And then we'll put another insulating washer, and we'll put the other binding post back on. Fun fact, this might have been slightly easier before the main frame went on, but no harm, no foul. We can just turn it from the bottom. I like turning them from the top because you can just give them a little bit of a spin. Okay, again, no need to really cinch down on that because we'll be making some more adjustments. Oh, silly me, I left a piece off. Ha ha ha. Let's fix that now. I don't know if some of y'all might have watched a video I did of a lightning bug many moons ago. And actually, it might have been a champion. I don't remember now. What I do remember is that it felt like I took it apart and put it back together in like 10 times because I just kept missing stuff. So what I forgot to put on was the circuit closer contact. And these, if you notice, these usually have a little lip sticking up like that. So that's always going to be up. That goes just like that. And then our little piece of busted insulator came off. So I'm going to get this thing partway threaded. And then I'm going to see if I can work our little piece of insulator back in there. And it's not looking so great, but that's okay. Okay. Yeah, that's not going to work for us. Let's grab a quick replacement. Okay. Let's see what we've got in the parts box. Do I have an insulator here ready to go? Doesn't look like it. Let's see what I've got in the way of parts bugs ready for a donation. Now that one's got no insulators on it. Okay, here is one we can borrow from. Okay, so the way this one works is it's just got plastic washers on both sides. And I'm just going to use the bottom piece of that. So I'm going to put the plastic washer back on top. Put this back together so that I don't lose any of the other pieces. So that can go right there. Okay, so that is now insulated. And now we can put our top washer on. Is that right side out? This way. I always like to have the clean side out. I mean, electrically it makes no difference. And then put the circuit closer connector on there with the little flap coming up. And then, of course, the contact. Oops. One more try. And get this circuit closer into the right position. So we just want it squared up right there. Okay, and see if we can give this a cinch. I think that'll work. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and get the other half of the circuit closer on. So we've got those and those and these, which, of course, maybe this is going to be one of those ones where I take things apart and put them back together 10 times. Off again. Okay. So what did we miss this time? So this actually gets a washer, a circuit closer, and a contact post. That's a lot, huh? And then just hold that all in place while you get the screw going. Simply move the circuit closer contact into place and hold that all square while you get the last couple of cinches down on the screw, and then give it another adjustment because you didn't hold it good the first time. And one more cinch down, and maybe we got it right this time. Also on this side, did the exact same thing. I swear these little washers feel like they're just decorative. But that goes on top of there. Very nice. Okay, so this is basically gonna go like that. And then that goes down through. And this hole is threaded, so we got to get it threaded down through there. And I'm just trying to get those lined up. And then we can put the nut on from the underside. All right. And then, of course, that's going to get a knob. And once that's tightened down, it'll be real nice. Let's try and give that one more little cinch now. Okay. Awesome. Super cool. All right, we're in the home stretch. Let's go ahead and get the main lever assembly in. So the trick to this is you want to kind of get the pin up into the hole, and then we're going to drop it down into the bottom trunnion, which we did not move because that saves us a lot of time adjusting things. And then we just get the top trunnion and put it in there. And then you just want to get those to marry up on the underside. There we go. So how do you adjust this trunnion screw? That's actually pretty easy. If right now, if you look at me, it's kind of got a little bit of a wiggle to it. Oh, look at me. Push this spring out of the way. Get that back. A lot of things to line up. Okay, so we got the trunnions and the pivot lined up. So basically, if this is too loose, the whole pivot will move around. If it's too tight, it won't go. So you want to just have it, just barely snug. So it still moves nice and free, but it's not wiggling up and down. And then you can just lock that down. Very nice. Okay, next thing is this spring. So this spring has a little pointy part on the end of it. So you want to just get it into that hole. And then you find the screw with the little pin on it and just put it through there. And again, spring tension. Keep it to a minimum. You really don't need a lot of tension on these things. You want to try and have a lighter touch if you can. So I've just now made contact, and that's probably enough. We can always add more, but we'll go ahead and lock that down. All right, and then we just need the dit and the DA side stops. There we go. And we'll come back and do our final adjustment on those in a little bit. So then the contact spring, you always want the U-shaped part of it to be facing the front. That gives you the maximum amount of space on the pendulum rod to move your weights back and forth. So when we get these married up, basically you want to get them so that they make a nice even kiss. And during the adjustment process, we may end up moving them some more, but that's pretty good. You see how they're pretty flat, pretty flush against each other. So I'm going to give that another little snug. And then this was missing a weight. So I've got a couple sitting here. I'm going to start off with the small weight because that's normally what we find on blue racers. But, every bug is different. If this one has a little bit different feel to it, we can certainly make the adjustment there. Let's go ahead now and get the feet back on here. So we had the back one that was more worn and the front one's not so much. So we'll just put those right back where we found them. I used to replace feet, but I started using those bug mats, and that really helps things stay in place. So now I only replace the feet when absolutely necessary. Again, I have a preference for keeping things original, the way I found them. Okay, and I'm going to use the little screwdriver to bring this in. Very nice. We don't need to slam down on those. Just give them a little snug. And that just leaves us with our paddle adjustments, which simple enough. Actually, it's usually easier to go knob first. If I have any dexterity today. So you can put that until it just starts to poke out the other side, and then hold the paddle up to it, screw it in the rest of the way. It's going to thread into the paddle. And then you can start turning this out until it just starts to come up, and then that'll let you thread right into the lever. Very nice. Okay. So that just brings us to adjustment. So let's bring this weight screw up. We already kind of did where we think this one's going to be. So first things first, you want to just turn the DA side stop until it comes up off the damper, and then we want to back it down until it just barely touches the damper and lock it down. And then this one, bring it up until it just gives the lever assembly a little kiss, and then I'm going to back it off about half a turn. I'm going to lock that down, and that's usually pretty good, but we'll make adjustments if needed. And that actually looks pretty good too. So let's lock that down. And then this, what I normally do is just bring this in, get those to match up nice, and then move it to a place that's comfortable for me. This does, in fact, need slightly more spring tension. That's too much. That feels... okay, that's the way I want it. Okay, let's get a couple of accessories and we'll get this thing tuned up. Okay, first I grabbed my X6100. We'll use that for some sound. Next, I went ahead and grabbed a bug mat so that we'll be able to key real nice without sliding around. And then I've got a Bug Buddy. This one's actually interesting. It's the previous version. Last time I put an order in with Matthew to restock the my eBay store here in the States. He sent me a few of these. He said, hey, this is new old stock, just wanted you to have a couple, for laying around the shop. So that's a slightly different design than the current one that has a surface mount capacitor on it. But we'll throw that on there. That'll just make cable management super easy. So we can just cinch those down. And before I do anything, let's go ahead and go into the key settings and turn on the CW trainer so that I'm not transmitting. And give it a little more tone. All right. So now with the Bug Buddy, I can just pinch that right in there. Okay, so that's a little thin. That is zippy, huh? Let's try the big weight. I don't know how much difference that'll make. These blue racers really are designed to race, but let's go ahead and put that up there. Yeah, that's still going a little quicker than I like. So let's go ahead and we'll stick a pendulum extension on there, and I will put the small weight back on because that'll probably do what we want, but we can keep making adjustments as needed. Oh, this is one of the newer bugs where this doesn't quite fit on here. That's interesting. So it doesn't seem like a lot of difference, but typically on Vibroplexes, the pendulum rod is 5/32, and sometimes they're 4 millimeters, and that's not a very big difference, but it's enough that sometimes these won't won't quite slip on here. And of course, you don't want to force anything on. So I've got a slightly bigger one, a 4mm version, but I've also been playing with these pendulum couplers. So I'm going to try one of those. This is the first time I've really, tried one on a video, so if it goes awful, my apologies. That pretty much works. Let's make just one more change on there. We'll put the big weight. We'll put the coupler back on. Yeah, that feels pretty good. And then what's our max speed? Yeah, okay, that'll work. So that gives us a little range. All right, so okay, one little blip in there, but that was my fault, not the key's fault. Yeah, this is a great key. It cleaned up really nice. It looks fantastic. It runs fantastic. Other than the fact that it's way too fast for me, and I've got to throw a pendulum rod on there to bring it down to a speed I'm comfortable with. This is just a fantastic key. And of course, the speed of the key is not the key's blame. Just like that blip I made keying, that's operator error. So yeah. I look forward to getting this thing on the air. I'm traveling soon, and the Blue Racers travel pretty well. I've got a little travel case for them. Maybe I'll bring this one with me, or maybe I'll go with the tried and true, my everyday carry, which is a 1954 presentation model. But yeah, until then, I look forward to getting this on the air. If we have a QSO in the next several days, this is probably the key I'll be using. And until next time, folks,